I think it goes back to the root of it when they say boys don't cry. Every time a little boy gets into some kind of altercation or he falls or something, they be like, "Man up! Boys don't cry. What you crying for?" And I think that's detrimental.
Like if anytime my son gets hurt and he was like hurt, there's a different type of cry. Like you can tell like when he's hurt. That's when you let his mom go out there and do her thing. But he get a big hit in football or he get fouled playing basketball. You're not crying about that. Like get your ass up and saying do what you want to do.
Nobody's doing that, right? So when you talk about like people saying overly emotional, what they're referring to is misplaced or inconvenient displays of emotion.
So this is what I'm saying. Like anytime like men express passion and shit, like it's something women try to grab onto that as us being emotional or as emotionally deregulated as women tend to be, and it's just not the case. It's how we express ourselves. That's how we express our passion, and that's not us being. That's us intentionally funneling our passion that way. Now throwing shit, 100% agree with you. And anybody playing a game that's throwing up these controllers is $60 to $100. So all right. Throwing shit, that's dumb. And that means you suck at the game. But as a gamer, I can say that. But I don't believe that a man playing a sport, dunking on somebody and saying, talking shit, being hype, screaming and yelling or whatever, is anything remotely close to being emotionally unregulated.
Yeah, Michelle, I agree. I don't think sports are emotional because I think sports is like a fight, right? You put
Well,
yourself into
yeah,
a
you
different.
see plenty of it when
Yeah.
they get into the court. Like
Yeah.
they,
But let me explain. You put yourself into a different mind frame when you're playing sports. So it's like, would you say that a man is emotional during a fight because he's aggressive and he's, maybe making noises and, all that type of stuff? You probably would say
I'm
you wouldn't say he's being emotional, right? I think sports are like that. Like it's this tunnel vision that you have and you're locked in and you're just in a different place. But I don't know if I would call that the same as being emotional. It's just a different
And
state.
again, I'm only speaking for my perception. I'm not a
Yeah.
man. I don't, play sport like as a competitive man because men are, like I said, by nature, they're more competitive. But I seen that the reactions when it comes to video game and stuff like that. And definitely that is a different level. I cannot compare that like, guys playing ball or anything like that because it's very different. And there's a lot of more other, outside things that take place. But we do have to name that, it's okay. Like, anger is an emotion and it's normal and it's fine to feel it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not because a man allow himself to feel that it makes him less of a man. Absolutely not. That's not what I'm going with it. I'm just saying that you guys are allowed to feel that just like we do, that we are sometimes more over the top. Yeah, absolutely. That we lack a lot more regulation than y'all do. Yes, absolutely. I'm not taking that. But I'm saying, it is normal for a man to be, lack of regulation emotionally and get upset and act upon it because it's
Yeah.
an emotion. It's just
Yeah.
part of being
So
human.
so during
Can
your
I can I
Michelle,
can
you
I say
r-
something real quick?
real quick, Michelle, during a fight, are you emotional?
I used to be when I was younger and I learned how to regulate that and have self-control.
So if you were to get into a fight, do you think that you would have you would be emotional? You would exhibit those behaviors that maybe people would exhibit during sports?
I don't allow to myself to get into a fight, and I'm a woman.
No.
I don't fight. But if you put me in that predicament, and we have to hypothetically speak about that, um, definitely I will guide the fight based on how I'm feeling. Yes, I will say
Okay.
yeah.
So you will be angry during that fight, and it's okay because that's an isolated place where we you are allowed to be that way, and it makes sense to be that way. It's the same with sports. We isolate this and we put it over here and we put this emotion and passion in here. It's the same way during a fight. You wouldn't call a man or a woman emotional during a fight because
No,
it's an isolated place where it's allowed to be there. It makes sense. So that's the only thing I'm trying to say.
yeah, no, I'm not.
Real,
I'm not calling per se labeling a man emotional because of that. I'm just saying that y'all are allowed to feel that emotion because anger it is an emotion.
For sure.
why do we have it? Why do we have the idea that men are supposed to be absent of emotion?
I
That's
think
Why
men
do
are.
that's
you
the real
have that
question.
emotion? I mean, why do you have that idea? I think it goes back to the root of it when they say boys don't cry. Every time a little boy gets into some kind of altercation or he falls or something, they be like, "Man up! Boys don't cry. What you crying for?" And I think that's detrimental.
And you know
So do
what
you
that
think
is?
it's an unrealistic? Do you think it's an unrealistic expectation for women
it,
to expect men to not show emotion?
why would you want a man that doesn't show emotion?
I don't think that we should like be emotional and display our emotions. I think we need to have healthy outlets in order to be able to guide them and maybe redirect their energy in a more positive manner. But when it comes to men, like us being overly emotional, it's very dangerous. Like a man not in control of his emotions is a danger to himself and other people around him. And he has the propensity to effectively cause real harm to people that are smaller than him that he can
I
like
agree.
impose his will on. So that's kind of
Well,
like why it kind
if we're
of has
talking
to be not
specifically
that we're
about violence, though,
emotionless, but that we have to be more regulated with our emotions than the women.
if we're talking about violence, I think that's one thing, right? Or doing things that could cause others harm. But the sheer display of any type of emotion, like I think you could cry at like a funeral or something, like if a parent died, but that's about as much acceptance as society would typically allow for men. Otherwise, you're deemed as a bitch or soft or
But you
anything
gotta
else.
understand, Chef, that's how they built it. That's how they created it. That's the blueprint they laid out for men.
Who was they?
Understand that, but why do we
The
perpetuate it?
patriarchy.
So there's a difference between a man being overly emotional and a man just showing emotion. These are different things, right? I understand the idea of telling your boy, your son, yo, we're not telling you don't cry ever for any reason. We're telling you don't cry for this, right? We're teaching you how to regulate your emotions and where to put them. Like, right, when you tell your son, yo, you fell and you want to cry, and you tell him not to cry, he'll stop crying when he falls. You know, and you'll show him, you'll be like, yo, you cool, look at you. You're a big boy, you're a man. Look at, and you might pat him on the chest. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm cool. Right?
Yeah.
We're training them to control it when you can control it. But of course, there are situations where you want to be emotional and it's going to manifest in tears or something like that.
You look with small children. Based on what parent goes over to them when they get hurt, it depends. Tell you how they're gonna react.
The
If the dad
reaction,
goes
yes.
over to him, then he's not gonna cry. But if the mom goes over to him, all that lovey-dovey huggy shit, he's gonna start crying. That's why their dads say don't do that, because we don't want our sons to have that to be their default response when they are hurt or when something gets hard. We don't want them to be saved by their mothers all the time, because that's not what's going to happen later in life. Sometimes it's necessary for them to be saved though, but it's just not in mass. It's not an all the time thing. Like if anytime my son gets hurt and he was like hurt, there's a different type of cry. Like you can tell like when he's hurt. That's when you let his mom go out there and do her thing. But he get a big hit in football, or he get fouled playing basketball. We're not crying about that. Like get your ass up and do what you want to do. Because like Mont said, there's nothing wrong with being emotional. It's being overly emotional. And a lot of times young boys become overly emotional about adversity or things that harm them or hurt them.
So I know
think about three of y'all right now have. I'm only gonna ask this one more thing. I heard about three of y'all say the word overly emotional. What's the acceptable threshold? That because your overly is different than my overly, and I think that's where we're running into a wall. Is that what's the actual acceptable threshold where people will say, okay, you're not a bitch for crying about that or displaying some sort of emotion. You're a human too.
I think an emotionally dysregulated person is oftentimes what people are referring to, right? Like, so when people say somebody's emotional, everyone is emotional and people accept emotions when appropriate. So if you're at a graduation and you see a man cry because he's proud of his daughter, no one's going to say, you're being emotional. Nobody's going to run up to them and say, stop crying, be a man. Because that's an accepted place for a person to have emotions. If you're in a hospital and you're in ICU and people are getting bad news, no one's running in and out of the hospital telling men not to cry. Nobody's doing that, right? So when you talk about like people saying overly emotional, what they're referring to is misplaced or inconvenient displays of emotion. So when they either don't think it should be there or they're not ready to handle it, which oftentimes is subjective and it's a projection of what that person's threshold is. Because there's certain people, they can't deal with any emotion. Then there's other people they can. So I'm going to call people overly emotional because they can deal with it, while there's others who can't. So I do think it's a little bit subjective and up in the air. It's a little bit ambiguous.